Yes. Good afternoon. We'd like to present an exciting new proposal for an exciting new initiative called Full Circle Carbon. While progress is being made on alternatives, the reality is that we're still heavily dependent on fossil fuels, and reduction of emissions of CO2 are not likely to decrease significantly in the foreseeable future. UK government policy is mainly focused on reducing emissions, but we'd like to turn the problem on its head and focus more on rethinking carbon. By analogy, if you consider atmospheric CO2 to be water in a bathtub, the focus on reducing emissions is like trying to turn off the tap or turn down the tap a little bit. Carbon neutral strategies are kind of just like splashing around a little bit. They're not really making much of a difference to the net CO2 levels. And then there is carbon capture and storage, but that's a very defensive strategy. It's kind of still seeing carbon as a toxin. We'd like to focus on carbon conversion to valuable products. This philosophy, our philosophy, falls into the broader idea of the circular economy, and Manuel is going to continue talking about that.
Thank you for the introduction to circular economy. With that also comes not only economical ideas, but also that society. We need kind of like closing the loop. We need to get people together. We can't work on one side with like the future technologies without getting the backup from people and companies. So our ideas have an organization that is private and publicly funded, that works together with SMEs, large companies, sponsors, cities as well, and then make sure that we can reinvest in those people and where innovation is needed, and focus instead of reduction and abatement technologies, more like on the reusing and recycling carbon as mentioned before. For this we will look into getting funding from the government, and we will show later where we think we fit in. Also from private consultancy, which we will develop our expertise over the next years, and we can explain the business model later. And that will then lead also to us being able to secure grants for companies that will need it the most, kind of like outside of the spectrum of many company initiatives, government initiatives right now. And that again will like spur kind of like the movement of show that money is needed some other places, and show the government that we think there's another opportunity. So activities we want to do are kind of like interlabs with like the circle and how we fit into society, into the economy. So how we would work obviously is dependent on student projects, staff secondments and industrial placements in the beginning, just to get our linkages right, our networking, and also get bigger attention. And that's why I also want to look into education, because it's about rethinking carbon literally. It's about, is it just a bad thing? We're not glorifying the carbon economy and CO2 emissions, but we want to look from a different perspective at it. And it also would mean that we look into partnership branding, so people that will work together with our organization would be recognized for what they were doing in perspective to the bathtub, actually trying to do something different. And for that we also would use social media, and looking on the stuff down here from our consultancy perspective, we obviously will look into lobbying the government and make sure that technology transfer is happening between companies as well. So make it open source, so create a platform with open source. Oh, it's that one. So our unique selling points would be rethinking the carbon and closing the loop, so the circular economy perspective, a direct industry contact and efficient technology transfer. Apart from that, I mentioned the partnership branding and forward improvement. And looking in the current environment, we have these ideas of CO2 abatement and low carbon technologies, and a lot of organizations in the UK that support it and also have grants for it, like the Carbon Trust, and the circular economy organizations where you can also get funding, so that's where we think we can get funding and support. But at the same time, we're just bringing those two together with our idea of introducing carbon as a feedstock into circular economy thinking. And to get a little bit more practical, not only where we fit in the organization environment, we want to look where actually we can apply carbon feedstock.
So this rethinking carbon is feasible, and it's already happening. For example, there's this company, Novoma, which is taking processes forward. There are many other applications of CO2 as well, which again feed into this idea of the industrial economy or the circular economy. As a fledgling organisation, we've been doing some preliminary case studies of what our first projects could be. For example, Scottish Southern Energy, and with an initial injection of funds and other resources, we could extend our services to SSE and help them integrate their activities into the circular economy. So thank you very much from Full Circle Carbon.
Thank you. I mean, I suppose I have a question actually. I think you're absolutely right that, as far as I can see, despite the fact of being a big fan of renewables, we're not going to get to that right away, and so we're going to be using fossil fuels for a while. So I really do like the idea of rethinking carbon. What I didn't quite get though was exactly what the uses were. You skipped over that quite quickly actually, so I wonder whether you could just spend a bit of time just explaining, you know, some of the, do you have a specific idea that you're going to sell, or is the idea that you're exploring opportunities?
Yeah, so the idea is that starting as an organization, we looked at some of the organizations out there, and we've obviously been here in the ECCI. We looked how they're operating, what they're funded by, and how they kind of link the gaps in between. And we want to start with obviously information gathering. So there are initiatives on a European level that look into bringing companies together, and there are some out there in Europe as well. So we want to make sure that their knowledge and what they find out is accessible and open for other companies to tap into as well. So it would be in the beginning a very kind of like organizational, like think tank of like gathering this information, and while establishing those networks, then also getting the expertise with the ability to give advice to companies later on. And it will, in regards to Connect, for example, what they have is an online platform and community where different companies can take place, and it would be like in the beginning very much a mediating form we would be taking there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I have a bit of a two-part question. The first one is, do you have any estimate of how much of the carbon that we produce is actually in a kind of in a closed system where you can tap into it and convert to other products and services? And secondly, are you proposing this strategy as a replacement for the splashing and the turning down the tap, or are you suggesting this needs to be an additional approach to dealing with the carbon problem?
I think there's actually like existing technology that we can actually use. So, for example, there's actually a company in Dutch, in Netherlands, they actually combine the CO2 emit from the cement factory to actually produce tomatoes. So it actually, we can actually implement it in maybe to more cement factory around the world, let's say in Dunbar, just 30 minutes drive from here. So the technology is actually existing over there. So it's actually like that's actually directing get the carbon dioxide directly from the plant, from the productions, and link it back to the recycle and reproduction of carbon dioxide, as we say, or conversions. So
it's more a case of like finding a healthy equilibrium. So rather than sort of having this very nihilistic view of the human race as polluting the planet and killing everything, we're trying to fit ourselves into a natural cycle. And say thinking of CO2 levels as being a healthy equilibrium, and it's as any equilibrium, it's inputs and outputs. So yes, there may be we do need to try and reduce our inputs into the system, but as you said, we can't do that like that. So we need to work on finding a healthy balance that's going to continue to be sustainable into the future, rather than, as I say, this defensive strategy of we need to somehow tighten our belts and stop breathing.
To talk business and ideology. No, it's over 500 million tons of CO2 emitted in the UK. You can't use them all as industrial feedstock. So we are not saying we're replacing. We just found this niche that's not used right now. We promote CO2 abatement and low-carbon technologies. We don't want to continue this CO2 emissions. We want to bridge the gap when fossil fuels are still emitting CO2 emissions and make sure that we're already doing something now. And with the idea of the circular economy, it's done with materials, and we want to be in that gap. We're not denying any of the other initiatives that are out there, like energy efficiency. We're promoting them as well. We just want to make sure that what's left out right now is covered as well.
Okay, good. I think that new thinking is good. It's what's needed, a new approach to the problem. Thank you.
What I like about this is you're turning the problem on its head. In that sense, instead of saying carbon is the problem, you're saying, hang on, you're an enterprise, this is a product, a service, an opportunity. How can you use this? How can you make this into a tradable, valuable product or service? And there's going to be a lot of education, a lot of need there, because I mean, just like waste to landfill site is something just to get rid of rather than seeing it as a value. And I don't feel there's enough emphasis. We're very busy trying to reduce carbon, obviously, and clearly that's going to remain a priority. But in the meantime, outside just simply storing it, it is a mechanism for actually using that product. That would be incredibly interesting.
It's also a very holistic view. I mean, it's that kind of circular economy view of linking everything into one broader ecosystem or metabolism, depending on
using the power of capitalism to help the solution rather than saying must stop. It's actually how can you innovate and work within the system, which is often more complementary.
you need more case studies, we can provide later.
No, thank you. Any other comments, guys?
I guess the only other questions and comments I have, I'd love to hear from some of the other members of your team as well, about kind of, it's a really great concept, the circular economy, and really kind of shifting the paradigm as well, and like you said, kind of turning the issue on its head. So in terms of direct impacts, I realize this is more about kind of a platform, a think tank, and generating ideas, and also being able to bring different projects together. I saw that there was a circle on kind of student projects as well. So I guess getting to the question, I mean, so how are you going to engage different stakeholders and different people in this whole model?
I think we are basically trying to focus on creating public awareness, trying to take away from the negative stigma of carbon. So we actually made a Twitter account, and through just those kind of social media method, we're trying to just create public awareness about this.
And then I think to actually get more students to get involved, actually you can like involve students in the process of like consulting, and then maybe like linking with the university as well, so they can actually learn more of their process, and then like if they even leave us as a they don't have to be an employee for FCC. They can just like student volunteers to come and spread the word and get more concept of like over the business basically.
Great, thank you.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.